So here's what your business is actually worth, a 60-second valuation scorecard. Business valuation is the most misunderstood concept in entrepreneurship. And when I was scaling Passion to more than 100 million in enterprise value, I thought valuation was just revenue multiples, but I was wrong. And that mistake almost cost me everything. My name is Matthias and I'm helping founders to build companies worth over $100 million. So what actually drives valuation has nothing to do with how much money you make. And there are 9 hidden factors that can boost or crush your valuation overnight. And 90% of founders completely ignore these. So I built a simple scorecard that shows your real company value in 60 seconds, including these 9 factors. And my clients used it to triple their valuations. So by the end of this video, you will know exactly what your company is worth and the specific moves that you can make right now to double it. So here's your business scorecard. You find the link in the description below. Let me explain how it works. You pick here if you have a software, an e-com, a service-based business, or any other type. You just pick the one that you are. In my case, it's a SaaS. Then there is a baseline valuation, which is based on revenue and EBITDA. We will talk about that in a second. But if you have less, then there are value adders, things that increase your multiple, and value subtractors, which are items that lower your multiple. And then we derive a valuation of your business. And we also will put it on a time axis. So let's take this random business here. And let's say the business makes 5 million in revenue and has 500K in EBITDA. Not bad, you might think, right? But if you make less than $1 million in EBITDA, you get a 1x multiple. 1 to 3 million, a 2.5x multiple. 5 to 10 million, 5x multiple. And more than 10 million in EBITDA, you get a 6x multiple here. So if you ask yourself now, what about 4 million? Just pick one of them. Pick 5x or 2.5x or pick something in the middle. Doesn't matter. So we get here a multiple of 1. So now let's go to value adders, which are items that can increase that multiple. If your revenue growth year on year is between 30 to 100%, you can get a 1 in here. If it's more than 100%, you get a 2. So let me put in 20%, which is not bad, but it's not 30%. Then revenue retention. So this is super important for software businesses. But what if you don't have a software business? Well, then if you have an e-com, look at your reorder rate. How long does the customer actually stay? How often do they purchase? For service businesses, the same. How long is a customer with you? And the same for other businesses. For example, let's take Apple. Customers are buying over and over again. It's not recurring, but reoccurring, except the iCloud subscription, which is recurring. But recurring derive a retention rate. What you could do here, I added this sheet called NRR. You can put in how many customers are leaving every month, and then you get the annual revenue retention here calculated. So if 5% of customers are leaving every month, that means you have a 54% retention annually. That means half of your customers are gone. So if 100 are starting beginning of the year, at the end of the year, you have 54 left. That is then copied over here, which is the next one. If you have less than 80%, yearly revenue retention, you get a 0. If you have more than 80%, you get a 2. Your EBITDA margin is obviously 10%. If it's more than 30%, you get a 0.5. Otherwise, it's a 0. And then you have your LTV CAC ratio. Your LTV is your lifetime value. How much revenue are you making with the customer over their lifetime? And the CAC is the customer acquisition cost. So how much does it cost for you to get a customer? And that ratio has to obviously be north of 1. Otherwise, you would lose money with every customer. And there are a couple of benchmarks here. In consumer SaaS, you want to minimum have a 3. In e-com, you want to minimum have a 4. In B2B SaaS, you want to minimum have a 10. If you have less than 10, 0. If you have more than 10, 0.5. Why? Because with retention here and growth and so on, we already have a lot of factors in it so that the LTV CAC ratio is not driving up that value anymore because already baked in up there, okay? But you will get an extra 0.5 if it's north of 10. Awesome. So in our case here, the growth is not strong enough, the retention is not strong enough, the margin is not strong enough, the LTV CAC ratio is not strong enough. That means it's still a multiple of 1. Now, value subtractors, do you have key man risk? Meaning that if you leave the company, the whole business defaults. If so, give yourself a yes here, and that subtracts 3 points from your multiple. If you have a key client risk, you make 80% of your revenue with one client, give yourself a yes, and that will subtract 2 points from your multiple. If you only market through one channel and not multiple, give yourself a yes, and that deducts another point. If your market is dying, give yourself a yes. It's another deduction of a point. And if you don't have any data, you run a Google Sheets empire, give yourself a yes, and it's another point deduction. So the good thing here is with -7 on the multiple side, which is 1 plus or -8 is -7, you do not have to pay others to buy your company. You could give it away likely for free, but you will still struggle to sell it because there's just too much risk, not enough upside, no one will really buy it. So what can we do now to take it one level up and minimum double the valuation of the company? So a couple of thoughts. If they would crack minimum $1 million in profit, you would have more buyers that will look into your business. That means 80K a month profit times 12, it's $1 million. Okay, so we need to get there. Revenue growth, you want to have the rule of 40. That means that profit and growth should be minimum 40%. So here, the best would be to go to 30%, and then you have the EBITDA margin of 10%. And with that, you have more than rule of 40, and then you have more buyers again that are interested in your company. If you can get the revenue retention up to more than 80%, you get another 2x. That is great. And that would make a huge difference for the business. Let's see how that would look like. So let's say end of this year, you're able to get it up to 6 million and 800K in profit. That's still a 1. Your growth is still 20%. So that's still not enough. Your revenue retention increased, that's great, but still 0. Your EBITDA margin increased, that's great, but still LTV CAC increased, still 0. So let's say end of this year, you're able to actually grow your company and make it more profitable. You're super excited, but still it's worth nothing. Why? Because the risk is in there and the growth is not strong enough, the EBITDA is not strong enough, retention not good enough, churn is still too high. So let's say this, in 2026, you actually can make a difference because you hit 10 million in revenue, which is a huge milestone, and lots of buyers are interested in companies that are north of 10 million. You do EBITDA of 1.5, and that obviously is a growth of 67% and an EBITDA margin of 15%. So that is 82%, which is really good. You get your 1 point here. So let's look at retention. What happened here? Well, let's say you're able to bring your churn down to 1.8%. I mean, this sounds crazy, right? Like to go from 5% down to 1.8%, like it's impossible. But this is revenue retention, meaning that it could still be that 5%, maybe 4% of customers are leaving, but you're expanding on the ones that are staying very effectively. And with that, you're essentially on a revenue retention at 80%, right? Logo retention or user retention could still be 50%. Who cares? But your revenue retention is 80%, and that is the big difference. And for that reason, you get 2 points here. So you now get 3 additional points on top of your 2.5x multiple, which actually has increased, right? Because you're north of $1 million in profit. And let's say you did even more. You took some risk out of your business, which is there's a strong bench that takes care of the business. And if you go on vacation, the whole thing doesn't default. So no more key man risk. You have way more clients, and it's not that like 5% of customers account for 90% of revenue, right? So you don't have that anymore. You launched another channel. Great. Okay, let's say the market still sucks. Could be, why not? And you clean up your Google Sheets empire. Perfect. So you get 1 point deduction. You add 3 points on the 2.5. So you add 4.5. And because you're a software business, that means that this 4.5 is going to be multiplied with your revenue, not with your EBITDA. That's why software is worth so much. If your business is not a software business, of course, the enterprise value is very different. So this scorecard gives you a very clear indication of what you need to work on. Here's a recommendation. You always work from the top to the bottom, meaning you first scale revenue, you don't care that much about EBITDA, right? You can always like increase margins. Once you hit 5 million, 10 million, you start to focus on EBITDA as well. In that process, you also look at anything to grow revenue more, to retain people better, to increase the margins, and to make sure that your LTV CAC ratio is really good. Only then you look at your value subtractors. Because, like, let's face it, in the beginning, you are the key man. And your co-founder or business partner, whatever, is also a key man. That is fine. But north of 10 million, at some point when the company becomes really big, that's when you look at these here. So you need to make the company work then without you. The client risk is clear, the channel risk is clear, the market risk. You can, of course, diversify markets, add new markets that are juicier and grow again. And then data is just homework by getting your head of finance or a CFO that cleans up the data. And what you want here is like audited data. So with that, you will get that check mark, and that takes all the risk out. And then ultimately your company is worth already here 45 million. So if that was helpful, let me know. Grab the template in the description and watch my next video on how to create an AI-powered marketing engine to grow your business to 50 million, to 100 million and north of that.